Begin the card Daf Masechtas Bava Kama Daf to begin 3 lines down at the top of the Yamud, where the Mishnah continues on the theme of the previous Mishnah is that we're telling you exceptions to the halacha of a shiur shenagach. We spoke about hektish, we spoke about anachi. Now we're going to talk about different personalities also that's going to have a different halacha regarding their ownership of the ox, regarding the payments of the shiur shenagach. Throughout the entire world. We're discussing today's daf are a shiur shel pekeach, so a regular person's ox, shenagach, but it gores a shiur shel cheresh shoyte b'katan. That of we know these three personalities, they consider people that don't have das. So when you gore theirs, so chayvig michayev. But the other way around, shel cheresh shoyte b'katan shenagach, when their ox gores a shiur of a regular person, patur they're going to be exempt. Which that connects to the discussion which is Gemara has in detail of ema midim apotropos latam ligves megufay. We do not appoint a caretaker, which oftentimes we do that for the assignment, for the people that don't have any intelligence, that but we're not going to make that the shiur tam should be collectible from gufay, from the cotton or the cheresh or the shaitan that owns this ox. But the Gemara does tell us there are certain times that the courts do appoint a caretaker. But when it comes to making it into a mu'id, then they will warn the apotropos, which will then make the shiur into a shiur hamud. Some of the terms and concepts in today's daf, reshus mishana, that you could actually make an ox go back from a mu'id to a tam by changing possession from one owner to another, and the Gemara is going to talk about that in regards to, let's say, someone having been the interim owner. Or shiur shel cheresh shoyte b'katan shenagach, the Gemara ultimately does say that this halacha of our Mishnah of an ox that's owned by a deaf mute, a mental deranged, or a minor, of course, so it's actually machlekes tanam. The Gemara says Amud Beis. Rabbi says you can be chayiv, and Rabbi Yaakov says it's going to be chatzin nezek. And the Gemara will explain: are they disagreeing? Are they saying the same thing? That's going to be a more detailed, at length discussion by the Maram. And another term that we have in our daf that comes with 3 times is mesechta tzad tamas b'mkayim medes, which there's an opinion that says that when a shiur tam becomes a shiur hamud, it's not like you totally transform to a new liability of nezek shalom. It's the tam that's still there with another 50% being added on, which obviously is significant with that would be that you would collect the first 50% only from megufay because you say that the tam is still there. So begin the current daf, lamatas, 3 lines down, says the Mishnah, shiur shel bekeach, an ox of a regular person, shenagach shiur shel cheresh shoyte b'katan, that gores an ox of a deaf mute, mentally deranged or minor, chayiv. So the shiur of the bekeach is going to be chayiv, meaning that owner. But the other way around, if the ox of the child, let's say, gores the ox of the adult, patur is going to be exempt. So Rashi brings that the Gemara is going to explain what this means to say is that we do not appoint of an apotropos, which is a caretaker, for the tam, which is this ox of the child, for the collection from the body of the shiur tam. Now, but regarding this game mu'id, we actually do appoint the caretaker for the ox of the orphans to be in place of the owners, because you have to fulfill what's called b'hud b'alav, which you can't do to children. And then the collection of the damage will be collected from the assets of the property of the orphans. But regarding a tam, where the collection is only from the body of the shiur, well, a shiur is metaltalin. That we do not appoint a caretaker for, as the Gemara told in the first parak of Yudalman Beis, when we had that very cryptic Mishnah, Shum Kesef, Shavah Kesef, like it wasn't translatable. Shavah Kesef was that we teach that the courts are not obligated for collection only from the chassan to have achrayas, which we explained. What do you mean? You collect from anything. We said that was referring to Yisayim. So that's this halacha we're discussing over here, that when it comes to mu'id, that will make a caretaker for. But when it's for tam, which is only from the shiur tam, which is migufay, which is metalin, no, then we're not going to appoint a caretaker for. Continues the Mishnah. Shiur shel cheresh shoyte b'katan shenagach. So when you have this ox of the, which we seem have just said a second ago, the words right before, the Mishnah is repeating it seemingly in the contradictory way. The ox of a deaf mute, a mentally deranged, or a minor that gored, the courts appoint a caretaker, and the witnesses testify that it had gored these 3 times in front of the caretaker, which the Gemara originally assumes that they testify is to say to collect the chatzin nezek of tam, which the Gemara is obviously going to ask. Well, you just contradicted a moment ago. You just said that we don't, and now you're saying that we do make a caretaker. But after 3 testimonies, it becomes a mu'id, and then it pays nezek shalom min aliyah. Continues the Mishnah, nispakeach hacheresh. If the deaf mute ends up becoming totally with all his faculties back, he's not deaf mute anymore. Or the mental range becomes totally sane. Or the child becomes an adult. Very interesting. It goes back, even though the Shamur, it goes back to being a tam. The reason for this is because the Tana of our Mishnah holds what's called Rishus Mishana of a Mu'id. So when you change its possession from one and it goes to another owner, that changes, it's like a reset. It starts over. It's a new owner. And that's what V'hu B'Balav has to do with the owner, Nuzach. And therefore, now that it became an adult, now became sane, it's like it's a reset, goes back to being a tam that the Meir. Basically says no, it retains its status of being a mu'id. Now another halacha says the Mishnah, Sharhart Stadin. These are the ox that were designated for goring. These are the bullfights that they train these bulls to fight, to kill. Such an ox is not liable to be killed. Because Shnemet says in the pasuk, when the ox is going to gore, not when they make it gore. And since here they're forcing it to train it with the red color, whatever this and that, therefore the ox is not going to be chayv misa. Now the Gemara goes back to the question which we said the Gemara was going to ask, was Hagufa Kashi have an internal contradiction in the Mishnah itself. It says, I don't understand. Amrit, you say, the ox of a cheresh that gores. Then it's going to be gores the ox of a regular person. The child, the deaf mute is going to be exempt. So obviously obviously we did not appoint a caretaker for the shiur tam of a cheresh v'katan, that there should be a caretaker to take over the place of the owner to fulfill v'hur b'balav, that you warn the owners and you execute the punishment of paying migufay. But ema seifa. But look at the meaning ligvais to collect the chatzinezig migufay from the gufay. But ema seifa, look at the next line. The words right after it says the courts do appoint a caretaker. And the testimony said in front of the caretaker. I understand. Obviously, you do appoint the caretaker latam for the innocent ox ligvas meguva to collect from his body. So Amar Rabbi says, no, this is how you're supposed to read the Mishnah. The ox of a cheresh v'katan negord ve'im huchzuku nachkanin, and then if it gets established as a gorer, because it did it 3 times, then we appoint the caretaker, and they testify in front of the caretaker, but not to collect chatzi nezik, but rather it's a mashvin l'mu'id to make it a mu'id. Now that it gores again, the shalom ma'aliyah has to pay for the best that it has. So it says the Gemara Ma'aliyah's man, whose best, whose pocketbook, whose wallet, whose bank account is being collected from over here when it becomes a mu'id. So it's actually machlekes. He says Maliyas, it's from the bank account of the orphans. Says no, Maliyas from the bank account of the caretaker. So the Gemara says, really? Really say that it's going to be collected from the bank account of the orphans? But he says, in this kak, and the courts do not address, they do not go to collect from the assets of the orphans, to collect anything from them, even if it's a document that their father had written. As the Gemara explains, the reason Masechtas Erechin, because orphans don't have to do a mitzvah. They're not adults yet. We wait till they become adults, and then you can maybe collect. And there the Gemara ultimately asks many different questions, and the Gemara answers, like we're going to say right now, that when a document it has that they're paying out interest, that's the one time. Meaning if their father borrowed from a non-Jew on interest, so then we're concerned for the loss of the orphans. They're paying out all this money. So then the courts will sell from their assets and pay up the debt. But never, ever do we collect. Now, for Rabbi Yochanan, he actually even adds on one more case. Says, no, it's either to a document that has interest, or if there's the widow is collecting the ksuba, meaning as long as they don't pay out the ksuba, she gets fed from the estate. She eats breakfast, lunch, and supper. She's getting all the different things. So then the courts will go ahead and pay out, fine, give her the ksuba. But never else do we. So wait a second. How could you tell me Rabbi Yochanan is the one who says that when their ox damages, the collection of mu'id is going to be from the bank account of the orphans? Rabbi Yochanan says only 2 times do we ever collect. From the ksuba, the isha, and a document that they're paying out interest on. So how can you say Rabbi Yochanan is the one that says that by mu'id, you're collecting from the Yisrael's bank account? So it's you're right, Eipach, you have to turn it around. Rabbi Yochanan was the one who said that you collect from the bank account of the caretaker, not from the orphans, because or else that would contradict what he says. Rabbi Shloimy says, he says, no, you collect from the bank account of the orphans. So the Gemara says, come on. Amar Rabbi says, so you couldn't say that he's the one that says the bank account of the orphans. You make a Rabbi Chanina, who is the other man, the Amar, that he's the mistaken one, that you should collect from the orphans. But Rabbi Chanina Dayanahu, he was a judge. And he went down to the depth of the judgment, and he cannot be the one who's saying that you're going to go and address yourself to collect from the assets of the orphans. Everyone knows that you don't. So a different Tana, a different Amar could make such a mistake. A Dayan who knows the halacha, he would never make such a thing. So how could you say he's the one who says that you collect from the bank account of the orphans? So rather said the Gemara, no, the truth is l'ilmoi tapach. The truth, you don't have to switch it around. And Rabbi Yechanan is the one who says you collect from the bank account of the orphans. Because of Mazik Shani. When it comes to the halacha of Mazik, which is what we're discussing in the Shur Amud, that's different. And Rabbi Yechanan and Mali said, yeah, you will collect over there from the bank account of the orphans. Why? I thought only when there's interest out on them and when there's the woman's getting mezainis from them. It says because the Amin Mali is Habatrabas, because if you would think to say that we're going to collect from the bank account of the caretaker, says you continue to base, says the Gemara, Memamni v'lo yavdi. No caretaker will sign up for the job because I'm not taking responsibility. I'm not going to help out the orphans because you're going to collect from my bank account. So therefore, that's what Rabbi Yechanan says that we're going to say that we're going to collect from the orphans. But generally, you're right. Then we would not collect from the orphans. But Rabbi Shloimy, he says no. He says Ma'aliyas Habatrabas, you do collect from the bank account of the caretaker because they ultimately did not safeguard appropriately. But what are you going to say? They're not going to want to take care. No, they could go ahead and collect from the orphans when they become older, because if not, you're right, then they won't do the job in the first place. But initially, the collection is from that of the caretaker. Now, continuing on this, in this halacha, the Mishnah, the Gemara actually says it's not according to everyone. This that we said, do you make a caretaker for the shirtam to collect from the body of the ox itself, which in our Mishnah we said we do not, the way we explained. We said that you're going to make a caretaker only for mu'id. Says the Gemara, Lamaisa Tanoihi. It's a machloikis Tanoim if we do or not. The Tanya, like we learned in the Brisa. If you have an ox that the owner became a deaf mute, or for the owner became mentally deranged, or the owner went overseas, he's not around. So Yehuda ben Akusa Amar Sumchas, he says the name is Sumchas, Hareu b'tam musai, it will remain as a shur tam until you testify in front of the owner. That's the words. We'll see exactly what he holds. But it remains a shur tam. The sages say, no, the guy's overseas, the guy's a shaita, whatever it is, we will appoint a caretaker, and we'll testify in front of the caretaker. It will not remain a shur tam until the owner comes. Now, what happens if in this bakeach hacheresh? What happens if the deaf mute becomes back as a bakeach? When the stop bashoita, the mental range becomes back totally sane. Or the child becomes an adult. Or the owner came back from overseas. He comes back to his Thomas, which, as Rashi points out, the Gemara is going to have to explain what you're talking about, because this same Manda Amar just said a second ago that he remains a Tam. We don't appoint a caretaker. It didn't become a Mu'id. So what are you saying? That it will come back to its Thomas? That's what he's saying. It will go back to being a Tam until it becomes a Mu'id again in front of the owner. Rabbi Yisrael says, no, it retains its chazaka. It will remain the mood even when the owner comes back, or when the child becomes adult, and all these different cases. Okay. But Amr, they said, wait, because he says this two times, so Rashi explains, the first time that he says this, the opening halacha, when the shar owner is a cheresh, or he's a shaito, or he's not here. So Sumcha says, he remains a tam until you testify in front of the owner. So if you think he means to say that the shar will not become a mu'id at all when it gores three times, to pay minaliyah when it's a mu'id, you can't say that. That sounds like the simple understanding. But Hamanikdani Seifa, look at the next case that they disagree in the Brisa. We said if the cheresh becomes a bekeach, so chazal tamusai. So now he goes back to being a tam because he holds obviously what's called rishus mashana, because up until now it was the owner wasn't here, whether mentally or physically, whatever it was. And when the owner comes back, he goes back to being a tam. Now, machlal, the inference is that obviously up until now was the ayayid, that he was a mu'id. So what does it mean that he was that he remains as a tam until ya'id b'bayla? But you tell when the baal comes back, it's actually going to go back from being a mu'id to a tam. So rather, what does it mean hadehu b'tamusay? What does in the Reisha means that he is a tam? Hadehu b'tmimusay, meaning that it's going to remain complete, the animal. You're not going to collect the gorings of tam, which is collectible from megufay. No, the animal will remain intact because we're not going to create any lacking in the animal itself. Oh, Alma, so you see that the Tana Kama, Yehuda ben Akusa, name of Simchas held, Ein mamidna patrapis letam ligveis megufay. Yeah, you will make a caretaker to make it into mu'id. And then when the owner comes back, it'll go back from being a mu'id through the halacha of Rishus Meshana to being a tam. But when it's a tam, for that you will not make an apotropos ligvis megufay. That's what it means. Oh, he's like the town of our Mishnah. But what if the sages say apotropos? No, we make a caretaker for them. And you testify in front of that caretaker. Oh, obviously we see that they're disagreeing on this halacha. That you make an apotropos to collect from the body itself, even when it's a tam. So this halacha of our Mishnah is not according to everyone; it's according to halacha of Sumchis. But according to the Chachamim, they hold that you actually would make a caretaker even ligves meguva to collect from the body itself. Now, the Seifa regarding the halacha, the second halacha, which when we said when the cherish is nispakeach, when the bailam come back, all these different things, which again it was a mood up until now. Does it go back to being a tam, or does it remain b'cheskasei? But Mike, what are they disagreeing about? That's on the principle of Rishus Meshanik Benayu. The difference between them is when the possession is changing, when it goes out from the apotropos and it goes now to the ownership of the owner, either because he's back physically or mentally. Does that change the mu'id? That's the difference between them. Sumchas Sabi holds Rishus Meshana. Yeah, the change of possession will change the halacha. It'll go back from being a mu'id to a tam. Rabbi Yesi Sabi holds no Rishus Ein Meshana. The change of possession will not change it, and rather it will retain its chazaka. So that's the machlokes regarding the second halacha. Now, we'll learn the brayso continuing this halacha. Shor cher shayta v'kat shenagach. The ox of a shor, of a shayta, cherish or a cut that gores. So Rabbi Yaakov misham chatzinezek. Rabbi Yaakov pays chatzinezek. The Gemara says Rabbi Yaakov ma'avidite. What did Rabbi Yaakov do? Now we see how important the Torah is. That's how it was given over. So they quote it as it was. But it just sounds a little comical the way the Gemara is saying it. Like, what did Rabbi Yaakov do? So Ela says the Gemara, no, Rabbi Yaakov oimer misham chatzinezek. Rabbi Yaakov says you pay chatzinezek. Okay. Says the Gemara, b'mayas kinan. What are we talking about? That Rabbi Yaakov had to tell us that by the shor b'chershed v'katan that he pays chatzinezek, and it doesn't just say Rabbi Yaakov v'chayev. Rabbi Yaakov holds that they're liable. So the Gemara explains, ibatam, if it's about a tam, pshita, obviously the kulam enami chatzinezek b'shalom. Everyone pays. In other words, you could have just said mechayev. We would know if it's a tam, you're paying chatzinezek. And the ibn mu'id, here it gets a little bit more complex till the end of the daf. If it's a shor hamu'id, so wait a second, a shor hamu'id, why is this paying chatzinezek? As the Gemara explains, ida avdilei shmira, if they did a full-fledged guarding of the shor mu'id, so what happened? How did damage? It broke through at nighttime, or bandits came and broke open the walls. So therefore, you're going to say that he doesn't have to pay the full damages. Okay, so then they shouldn't have to pay anything. What's this chatzi nezek that you're saying they're liable for? And if they didn't do a full-fledged guarding, so then you got to pay full damages. What's this chatzi nezek? Doesn't make sense. Tam is pashud, and mud wouldn't make sense. Some Rabbi says like this. He says, Lo oilam b'mu'id. Truth is, it's talking about shor hamu'id. What are we talking about over here? The Abdi Shmira Pechusa. They did like a lesser type of a Shmira. What does that mean? They closed the door appropriately in front of the ox. Which the Gemara later on, Nun Beis is going to tell us. When it's a door that could withstand a common wind, that's called kuro. That's called appropriately. But that's the Shmira Pechusa, because if you have an uncommon wind, they will knock the door off its hinges, and the ox is going to be able to go out and damage. So v'loyav delay shmira ma'ula. They didn't do a full-fledged shmira. So we had to let you know that the shiur of the cheresh of a cotton is going to pay chatzi nezik and not all the damages, because we have to exclude from Tanoim that actually disagree at the end of the parak. There is an opinion that holds they would be pater, and there is an opinion that would hold they would be chayiv full damages. The chiddush here is this Tana is telling you it's going to be chatzi nezik. Why? Where do you get chatzi nezik from? So the Gemara is going to explain interestingly like this. Rabbi Yaakov, this Rabbi Yaakov that says it's going to be chatzi nezik, Savala Rabbi Yehuda. He holds like Rabbi Yehuda, which is the Amar that he said Tzad Tam has been koyma imedes. Right? So remember, this is a shur mu'id. But when it becomes a mu'id, it's not like a new payment from 0 to 100. It's you retain the original tam, you're just adding another 50%. Okay. Moreover, V'savul Rabbi Yehuda on another point. The Amar that he says at the end of the paragraph Memeyim and Beis, mu'id sagila b'shmida pechusa. Very interesting halacha. Mu'id is enough with the lesser type of shmira, because as we'll see there in Daf Memhei, there's extra pasuk, which tells us that if you do a shmira pechusa, you're not liable in the nezik shalom that a mu'id is usually chayiv in. Now, what gets interesting is, but you will be chayiv in the chatzi nezek, as we're going to explain later on, because Rabbi Yehuda is exempting you with your shmir pechusa only on your tzad mu'id. But when you're a mu'id, there's a tzad tamis that's been koyim mendes that remains. Now the halach of tam is not enough with a shmir pechusa, because we don't have an extra pasuk, extra words in the pasuk to tell you that you're patur with a shmir pechusa. Now, although this element, this half of tamis, is collectible only from the body of the ox itself, and we're talking about a katan, which a cotton we don't collect from the metaltalin. Rabbi Yaakov is v'savar l'krabanan that disagree with sumchas that we mentioned before. The army that they say mamidna betrapes l'tam ligvas megufay. We do appoint a caretaker to collect from the tam migufay. So this halacha of Rabbi Yaakov is built on these two, really three halachas. Two of Rabbi Yehuda, and one with the Chacham that disagree with Sumchas. One is that Tzatam is b'mkoyim medes. Another one that for Tam Shmira Pechusa is not enough. And number three, that we make a apotropos that you could collect from the orphans migufay of the Shah. Okay. We're not done. That's not the heaviest part yet. Only Abaya. Abaya says, V'loi pligi? What? Rabbi Yaakov and Rabbi Yehuda do not disagree? You're telling me your shtickle Torah that you have three steps to be miyasher Rabbi Yaakov on the chatzi nezik of the shur hamud, of the shur of the shecher shur that's nogach. To tell him it's going to be chatzi nezik because he's like Rabbi Yehuda. Really? He's like him? He doesn't disagree with him? But V'tanya, you learn the Brayse this exact case. Shur shecher shur v'katan shenogach. An ox of a cheresh shur v'katan that gores. Rabbi Yehuda mechayev, that's his words, which obviously sounds like nezik shalom. Rabbi Yaakov chatzi nezik with the misham. You pay only chatzi nezik. So evidently they do disagree. So how could you say Rabbi Yaakov is going in shitas Rabbi Yehuda? So Amar Rabbi Ula says no, it's not difficult. He says Mash mechayev Rabbi Yehuda. This Rabbi Yehuda is being mechayev. Pidish Rabbi Yaakov. Rabbi Yaakov is just qualifying. He's explaining. It's going to be chatzi nezik. Why is it going to be chatzi nezik? Because, like we explained, you have these three steps, which is exactly like Rabbi Yehuda. Ketzad tam is b'mkoyim medes, and shmicha b'chus is not enough for the chatzi nezik of tam, and it's like the chacham who disagree with some. Fine. Now says the Gemara, Abaye dama pliki. Abaye had the question. Abaye held that no, you cannot give your pshat that you gave because they disagree. Says the Gemara, but wait, but my paligi, the way he was learning the brisa seemed to be he's mechayev, and he's saying no chatzi nezik. But what are they disagreeing? Like Rashi explained, what's the grace akasha? What they're disagreeing about? So he explains, if it's a shar tam, Rabbi Yehuda wouldn't say nezik shal. It doesn't make sense. how can we be mechayev nezek shalom from the shiur of the chesed v'kat? If it's by a muad with a shmir pechusa, but that the whole shtick of Torah that we said that's Rabbi Yehuda Shita. Even by a shiur pekeach, it's only going to be chatzi nezek. So how could Rabbi Yehuda be the one saying nezek shalom? That's who explained Rabbi Yaakov is like Shita Rabbi Yehuda. And if they didn't protect it at all, so why would Rabbi Yaakov say it's chatzi nezek? So according to Abai that they're disagreeing, so what are they disagreeing about? So it says Amalacha, he would tell you, what are we talking about over here? It's b'mud, it's sharamud, v'loy natre klal, and they didn't protect it at all. Okay, and what did Rabbi Yehuda say? You mechayev nezek shalom. Where do you get nezek shalom? Remember, you have to know Rabbi Yehuda's own opinions that we just quoted before. You're going to get 50% from his bank account, 50% from the ox itself, because Rabbi Yehuda says later on, anytime a tam becomes a muad, the part of tam, the 50%, remains over there, and it's collectible from the body itself. Now, here, even though the owners don't have intelligence, we appoint an apotropos for the tam to collect migufay, the part of the tam. So we understand Rabbi Yehuda, that holds you can be chayiv nezek shalom. The only problem becomes, how do we understand Rabbi Yaakov? Why is Rabbi Yaakov saying chatzi nezek? Says the Gemara, because Rabbi Yaakov is like Rabbi Yehuda b'chada. Remember, not like we said before. Before we were saying he's like him on both points. Now the Gemara is explaining, he holds like him in one, but he disagrees on another point. So the Gemara explains. Remember, here we're talking about you didn't watch it at all. The first pshat was saying that it was a shmir pchusa, and then we're saying that Rabbi Yaakov was like Rabbi Yehuda. But Rabbi who held that they were disagreeing, that the wording sounds like they're machlokes. So how do we understand? So they didn't watch it all. They didn't watch it all. Rabbi Yehuda makes sense. I mean, nezek shalom. What's pshat in Rabbi Yaakov? So it says the Gemara like this: Savak Rabbi Duchada, he holds Rabbi Yehuda in one halacha. Dealer Rabbi Yehuda Savak, because whereas Rabbi Yehuda holds Sad Tam medes, that the part of tam remains in its place, meaning that anytime a tam becomes a muad, 50% of tam remains to collectible only from the body itself. So Rabbi Yaakov holds over here for the part of tam, you're going to be potter. On that, he holds like him. But he disagrees with him on one. Meaning because, as we're going to explain in a second, because he doesn't hold that you could collect from Megufay, because we're not making an apotropos to collect from the part of tam. So on that is what he holds like him, that the tam remains. But the Ilir Yehuda holds he holds like the Chum of Sumchis that okay, shkoich. So we're going to collect Nezek Shalom because Ben Ali, of course, and from the tam we'll collect from the back. Ben Ali collect from Karka, that you collect from them, but he will collect Megufay. No. We don't appoint Abbas for tam because he holds like Sumchis. The only thing collecting is the half of the muad, and therefore Rabbi Yaakov says it's going to be chatzi nezek. That's what Abaya holds. If you say it's a machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yaakov in the case of when it was a muad, but it wasn't watched at all. Now, Amalei Rav Acha bar Abai l'Ravina. He says, wait a second. Bishlam ela Abaya dama pligi shaper. So, okay, it actually makes sense now. The way you say, according to Abaya, as Rashi explains, he's going to explain that the first brisa was talking about a muad. Why? Because you can't explain this talking about a tam to let us know that you're going to appoint an apotropos for a tam, because we already said the second brisa, the Yaakov says imam midin. So obviously the first one is also by a muad, which wasn't watched at all, which is how we just explained for Abaya. And you're going to pay chatzi nezek of muad, which is exactly as Abaya had explained. But according to Rav Adama, it says loy pligi. He explained that no. Rabbi Yaakov and Rabbi Yehuda don't disagree. He says Rabbi Yaakov is like the Shitas Rabbi Yehuda. So what does that mean? That means Rabbi Yaakov holds that you make an apotropos for a tam to collect megufay. So wait a second. Ademukila, instead of explaining the first brisa, b'muid, which is how we explained it, nukma b'tam. Why don't you explain it as a shar tam? Why? So the Gemara explains at the top of Mem Amud Aleph, and that is I Rabbi Yehuda. What does this mean? In other words, like says Rashi, if Rabbi Yaakov holds like Rabbi Yehuda, that says later on that by a shar tam, it's not enough with a shmir pechusa. Okay, so then you can explain the double shmir pechusa. He did an inferior type of shmira, and he didn't do a full-fledged watching, and that's it. It would be chatzin because it's a shar tam. Was sagst du a shtickl teire that you're explaining the brisa? You said that first you asked, what did Rabbi Yaakov do wrong? He said, no, Rabbi Yaakov didn't do anything wrong. He said, you pay chatzin nezek. He said, what's the case, Toma? You ended up telling me, okay, we're talking about, says Rava, it's a shar mu'id, that did a shmir pechusa. What says? What do you have to come on to a mu'id, shmir pechusa, and the whole shtickl teire? So he said, and you didn't do a shmir me'ula, and there's 3 steps over there. What do you have to have 3 steps for? Very simple. You're anyways telling me that Rabbi Yaakov holds because the way you have to say for the brises that he makes an apatrabas for a tam. So very pashut. If he holds like Rabbi Yehuda, it's a shur tam, and you did it and you did a shmir pechusa, so you can be chayv chatzin on the tam. And Rabbi Yaakov that says that no, for a tam it is enough for a shmir pechusa, and you're not chayiv with your shmir pechusa. So I can explain to you the level of shmir klal. Why don't you say he didn't do any shmir at all? So again, you'll be chayv chatzin nezik then. It's time like learn the brisa. Lazim Yaakov Omer says echad tam echad muad, shasham and shmir pechusa. But he holds shmir pechusa is enough for both tam and muad. So Bava Kama Daf. So what would Rabbi Yaakov be teaching us then as a chiddush? Of course. Then we asked. We said that tam. So we said pshita. That was what we originally wanted to say. A tam. No. There is a chiddush. That means mabetrabel the tam like megufay. That's why he says chatzin nezek. And that's why I didn't say Rabbi Yaakov Mechayev, because he wanted to let you know, like the Chachamim, that you could collect from Megufay. In other words, and don't say that we're talking about a mu'id and it's a nezek shalom, but by a tam that even chatzin nezek wouldn't be the case because ema midim. No, we wanted to tell you that you are mamidim. So why did Rava have to say we're talking about a mu'id? So Malay, so Ravina said to him, Hachikamar. What Rava was saying was Chada, one, the ispe tarti taima that has 2 reasonings. What does this mean? So Rashi explains. Since Rava holds that they don't disagree, Rabbi Yaakov and Rabbi Yehuda hold the same thing. So that's why Rava explained the brisa that is talking about a mu'id with a shmir pechusa. That you should understand from that Rabbi Yaakov holds to Rabbi Yehuda, which, as we said, there was 3 steps in that halacha, that it's enough for the part of the mu'id with a shmir pechusa. But the tzad of Thomas remains, and for that part, a shmir pechusa is not enough. And you'll also hear from that you appoint an abatrabas for a tam, like this megufay. So you're right. Of course, Rava could have said it in a pasha da'ifin to be miyashim the brayso said as a shar tam. We didn't because he wanted to tell you 2 ideas versus 1. That's why he said it in that more complex case. Now, one final pshat for the original question of Abaye's question. Yes, that we'll see over there on Daf Memhei. That's what we learned out from extra words in the pasuk that seems to indicate a lesser shmira would be. No. So see, it's based on psukim, on kroi, on pasuk. That the extra words tell us that. Right. Well, it could be. You could say it's svar because we're being machma on you nezik shalom, so that that will be okay. We'll go easy on you that in regards to this halacha. But the Gemara ends up learning it out from psukim, right? But it would sound like not sense because that's the becheskes that it's a nagkin or whatever. So a third and final pshat, Ravina Amay says that rishus mishana ikabaynayu. The difference between them, between Rabbi Yaakov and Rabbi Yehuda, is actually because we wanted to know that Abai had a question. It seems to indicate that they're disagreeing, but didn't we say Rabbi Shtigl Torah that they are saying the same thing, and Rabbi Yaakov is based on Rabbi Yehuda. So on that says Ravina says but the difference between them would be when you change possessions. Going to have a mood, it was a mood. And then the deaf mute became a bekeach. The Shabbat became totally sane. The child became an adult. Yehuda Sabi holds that you remain in your status, which it became amud by the apatrabas. So now the owner has to pay nezik shalom. Half megufay, half minaliyah, like old tam that become amud, but it's going to be nezik shalom. Yaakov Saba, he held rishus mishana. He says you're right. He holds like Rabbi said that for apatrab that it's going to be a nezik shalom. It's going to be like a Yehuda. Why is it going to be chatzin nezik? Because that even though everyone agrees mamidin apatrapis for tam ligvis megufay, on that no one's disagreeing. The machlekes is specifically, however, when you're mishan the rishus, does that take you back down to a tam? That would be the machlekes between Rabbi Yaakov and Yehuda. Thank you anytime. Those things.